All right, welcome to WKNC. This is Abdullah Najjar, and in today's episode of Connecting the Pack, I am joined by Viktoriia with a K, Tkachenko. I guess that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah, you're close.
Okay, that's good. So Viktoriia is a student here at NC State University. She is doing an exchange program, but she primarily studies in France in the Schema Business School. We will explore her journey, her educational journey, and the reasons or the motivation that brought her here to the U.S. In addition to some of the lessons that have been learned and some of the memorable experiences. So, Viktoriia, welcome to the studio.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. How would you rate my pronunciation of your last name on a scale of 10?
That was like 7 out of 10.
Okay. How about you try to pronounce your last name?
Okay, so it's Tkachenko.
Okay, Tkachenko.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
better. That was good.
Okay.
That was a solid 9.
Solid 9 improvements. And you mentioned that this is a very it's a typical Ukrainian last name.
Yeah, it's very common in Ukraine.
Mm.
So as I've mentioned, like around 300,000 people in Ukraine have the same family name as me, but it doesn't mean that they're my relatives.
Oh yeah.
No,
Right.
no.
Right. And then,
No.
like you said, it's like the Smith name
Yeah,
before your
exactly.
Smith last name.
Exactly. Yep.
So tell me, before we even talk about your journey in the U.S., I would be interested to know about your travels, because you mentioned before when we were having a conversation that you've been traveling since the age of 12, I believe.
Yeah. Well, those were like educational travels.
Mhm.
So I've started traveling in the very early age, thanks to my parents.
Yeah.
But I've started the educational travels since I was 11. Yeah, that's
Wow.
true.
Wow. And how many countries have you traveled to?
Like in general.
Yeah. Wow. You can't even put a finger on it. That's just like, it's a lot.
Well, that's not that many, like
Uh-huh.
I'm only 19 yet, so I really have a lot to explore.
Yeah.
And I still have a lot of countries that I haven't been to yet.
Right.
But so far, I've been to like 35 countries.
Wow.
Oh, this is like an approximate number. I'm not sure.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's more than one could achieve in a lifetime. Well, congratulations. I think there's a lot of value to travel and a lot of lessons to learn. What was your first experience like? I mean, you say you were 11.
Yeah.
What was that like? You still remember?
Yeah, I do remember that well because that was my first like big travel, and I went to the Great Britain, to
Mhm.
England, by myself. So I was studying in a small town not far from London during a month. So I was like in a boarding school, alone. I was 11, and I really had to experience like all this cultural shock. The language barriers, the communication barriers, like everything at once. But that was definitely a very valuable experience for me. And I guess that if it didn't happen that time, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Wow.
Yeah. And like, I was really sensitive that time because I was like, again, I was 11,
Right.
I have 3 siblings, and one of them is my younger brother. He's 10, so he's nearly the same age as I was back then. And I'm looking at him, and he's like a child, So I can't imagine him being like in London or whatever that city was, by himself for like a month, in a completely strange, in a completely random country
Right.
with random people, with the foreign language and everything. So that was a challenge for me, but
Yeah.
again, I'm grateful for that experience because now I'm sitting here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what is that something that is common in Ukraine for parents to send their kids abroad at an early age, or are your parents the exception here?
It's not common.
Mhm.
But again, as I've mentioned during our like previous conversation, my parents, they have a big emphasis on education.
Yeah.
For them, it is really important. It is very crucial, and when it comes to the education, they would spend a lot of resources, the time and everything for the education.
Yeah.
When it comes to like presents or just some like, I don't know, random stuff, no, we had like, my parents are strict, but when it comes to education, they would like really provide a lot of stuff, and they would want them kids to have the best, and to experience the best and to get the best education. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So did you make a trip every summer to pursue, an educational opportunity, or how did that work?
Yeah, that was like every summer, and then when I was like 13, I did that also during the Christmas holidays. So I would live like in a host family for the Christmas. But then it stopped. I stopped when the COVID started.
Yeah.
I was actually planning to go to Canada back in 2019,
Right.
but then the COVID happened and I couldn't go. So since then I didn't go anywhere, because then I had my like high school and I was a senior, so I had to do like a big final exam, which is like SAT here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was applying to the universities and everything, so I didn't do that since then.
Yeah. And do you actually research these, like what country you want to go to next, or is it very spontaneous?
You know what? I never knew where I would go. Like my parents were responsible for that.
Wow.
They would plan my trips. They would plan my kind of educational trip, and I would just do this. And very often, they would do like a trip that would be like 1-2 months during the summer, and I would go in different countries.
Huh.
So that would be like 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, 3 weeks there, and I would just do this.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible. That's just, yeah. And I mean, you never talk to them about this pattern, of like, do you know why it all started? Where is that stemming from, this motivation to want to send you abroad, to like pursue education? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like I've never talked to them or like something, but no, of course I've discussed that with them, and we had a lot of discussions based on that subject. So I'm pretty sure that my parents wanted me to study abroad since like, I don't know what age, but they always wanted me to study abroad, especially in terms of the university. They really wanted me to go to study abroad. And they knew that, there should be like some background for me to do that. Because, I guess if I didn't do those summer studies, it would be so much harder for me to move to France and then to move here again and, like to overcome these issues once again. So I guess they knew that. And plus, it really helped my language. I guess if I didn't have all those studies, I wouldn't have the opportunity to talk to real people, because in school we had the language courses, of course. I had like extracurriculars, I had all this stuff, and I had to learn the language. For me, it seems that I was learning some foreign language all the time. But the real experience, the real time when I really had the opportunity to talk to real people, and especially the peers, that was that time when I was doing my summer studies. So it kind of helped me to overcome the language barrier and, just to talk randomly to people. And like, I had no troubles talking in French or in English when I moved to France. So.
Wow. Is there something that you carried with you obviously passport whenever you travel, that's an essential.
Yeah.
But is there something significant that has always accompanied you throughout your travel journeys?
Well, I don't know, passport, money, cash.
Right.
There wasn't something specific, because again, like coming back to my parents, they're not really, how would I say this correctly, so even like I could say phone, but at that time I didn't have one.
Wow.
And later I got one, but it wasn't really nice. So, I had troubles like even taking the pictures with that phone. So I can't really say phone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I had like my luggage with some of my stuff.
Right.
No, there was no like specific stuff that I always carried with me. No,
Yeah. Nothing that is like, say, of a great sentimental value.
no, no,
Okay.
no, no.
Well, I mean, okay, so you said during COVID you had to pause this, obviously because of travel restrictions, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did that feel like? I mean, it must have been the first ever year when you just, you didn't have the opportunity to leave. How did you handle that?
Um, well, there were like the things that I had to think about, like,
Yeah.
just the health and everything, and just what to do with my life, and et cetera, et cetera. So, well, of course, I was upset that I didn't go, but there were some other stuff that I had to think about. And I mean, simply, I was trying to figure out what to do during my summer when I
Mm-hmm.
was staying and when we all were locked, you
Right.
know. So that was the question that we all were thinking about. But I can't say that you know, I was like, oh my God, I'm staying inside of the country. What should I do? No, no, that wasn't the case.
Huh.
Um,
Wow.
it was just more that, we all were locked at home
Yeah.
and we just didn't know what to do. Like in general, we couldn't leave the house and we couldn't really, have fun and go outside and meet people and use the public transportation, et cetera, et cetera. So
Mhm.
like really had to figure out what to do, just to kind of entertain
Survive.
ourselves. Yeah. So I was not really thinking about like, oh my God, I didn't go to like Canada or whatever. So
Right, right. And do you think it throughout these journeys that you spent abroad, did it make it easier to make friends, or did it make it harder since you're constantly moving?
mm, this is a very good question
Yeah,
because, well, personally, I'm more like an introvert. So for me, it's a bit harder to make friends.
yeah,
And, when you say friends, well, for me, a friend is a person who's always there for me. It's like, it's more than a friend, it's like a person that is always ready to help me, that is always there, that I can share anything with this person. So I can't say that I was making friends because we were just seeing each other for that time period. And then, we just left and we
yeah.
were just going back to our home countries. And that wasn't the case that we really kept in touch. I mean, I am subscribed to all of them on Instagram if it says you something, but
Yeah.
we didn't really, become like really, really good friends. No.
Mm. Yeah, and I would imagine that it would be difficult since it's, you're constantly moving and, establishing these contacts or connections. It would be, or deep connections rather, it would be hard.
And like also there were a lot of people, well, teenagers that would come with their friends.
Yeah.
So they would come with the people they already knew.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they just didn't want to make any new friends. There were a lot of people like that. They would come like with their sister or brother or with their friends. So
Yeah.
they would just stick together all the time. And, they would not really accept anyone else in their like little circle.
Mm.
So
Right. Yeah. That they already. I think there's a downside to that because you never really experience discomfort, and I think through discomfort you experience growth.
of course,
Yeah.
well, a lot of children, a lot of teenagers, young people who were doing that, they were forced to do that by their parents. So a lot of them didn't really want to be there.
Oh.
So there's for some it was an opportunity like for me,
Yeah.
but for some people it was like a punishment or just like a go study, you want to have fun this summer, you should study in la la la. So for some
Wow.
people it wasn't really opportunity, it was like we have to be here because our parents paid for this and we
Yeah.
just have to be here.
Wow. And when in Ukraine, did you, since you most of your travels are in the summer, was it? I mean, was it easy to make Ukrainian friends? Since most of the time of the year you're there, but in the summers you get to leave. How 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 would you describe the sort of friendship situation in Ukraine?
Well, I had my school friends,
Yeah.
because we were studying, from the fall up till the May, we were all kind of staying together. We
Mhm.
will go into school. We were seeing each other every single day. and we would spend the weekends together.
Yeah.
And then most of my Ukrainian friends, like from school, they would go travel during the summer, or, they would, I don't know, visit their grandparents. So most of them wouldn't be in Kiev, so that's where I'm from, in town. So it wasn't really the case that everyone was like staying at the same place, and, I was like the only one, like the outlier who didn't have the chance to hang out with all the rest.
Right.
No, everyone was like busy and everyone was traveling or doing some stuff. So
And let me ask you this: why did you choose France because that's where you primarily study, right? Why France out of, say, 195 countries?
Well, that is a very interesting question, and there's a very long story behind that, so I'll try to, shorten it. So at first, when I was doing my studies, I was kind of doing those studies in English.
Yeah.
So that was my third language, because first two are Ukrainian and Russian. So I was always studying in English, and I was practicing English, and so my target was English. But then I remember we were traveling with my parents in France. We were just traveling. We decided to go to France to the island course. So at that time, my dad, he knew that I had French as one of my foreign languages at school, because when we came to the middle school, we had to choose another foreign language. So we had like English as the first foreign language, but we also had to choose another one. So I had French, but I hated it so much. Like I was just, I didn't skip the classes, but I was not really doing something in the classes. I didn't like the French classes, and well, I didn't enjoy it. So when we went to France, and my dad, he knew that I had French classes back at school, he was just like, go talk to some random people. I remember there was like a holiday or something. There were like a lot of people. There was like a huge crowd outdoors. There were like some policemen. And he was like, go talk to the policemen. Go find out like what's happening here. Go talk to some random people. Come on, practice your French.
Oh my.
And I'm like, oh my God, like I don't talk French. I don't know a word in French. I was like just bonjour or like some stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, he, like my dad, he would usually put me in those really discomfort situations for me to, like leave my comfort zone and go practice the language or whatever. And, when he realized that I don't speak any French, we came back home to Kiev, and he made me study French. I then went for like some extra classes, and I've started studying French very intensively. And then since that year, I was then going to Francophone countries to study French. And at first, I really hated that. Like I didn't like French. I didn't like the fact that I was forced to do that. Because when you're forced to do that, you don't like it. You're being stubborn, and you're trying to do anything but learn whatever. Or like for me, it was like learn French. But with some time, I started liking it. I was traveling to like Belgium or Switzerland, especially like the French part of Switzerland, France, many places in France, and I liked it. I was discovering their culture, their language, and just being around French people and French society and culture. And I was like, okay, that's not that bad. So by the end of the high school, I had pretty decent level. So when there was a question, where would I apply? We were like, okay, let's go for France. Because France has public schools, public universities that are for free. And at first, my initial plan was to apply to French public universities, which I did. So I applied to 3 public universities. That was the max. I got accepted. Everything was fine. And then, like, in the very end, someone just, like, proposed me French business schools. And there was this idea that it's way easier to get to the job market from the business school than from, like, a public school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was the reason why I actually went for the business school. And especially when I discovered that the studies are in English, I was like, okay, well, I'm doing that. So
Wow.
I applied to Schema, and I had like an interview and some other stuff, and I got accepted. So I was like, okay, I'm
S-
going to Schema.
So technically, it wasn't your first time in France, and it wasn't planned that you would go to Schema.
Oh
You know,
yeah, it wasn't my first time in France. No,
yeah,
that was like my, I don't even remember, but like that wasn't for sure my first time in France. No, no,
yeah.
no. Um, that was actually also facilitated me my move to France because I
Yeah.
knew what to expect. I knew the region. I knew, kind of like what to expect in terms of people, culture, food, all that stuff. So I was prepared for that.
Right.
Yeah. And Schema, yeah, it wasn't my first plan. It wasn't my initial plan.
Wow. And how did you feel about going to Schema? What was your initial experience like? I don't know how long you've spent in 2 years.
2 years. Yeah.
Wow. How would you describe those 2 years in the Schema program?
Okay, so the first year, well, let's say first semester was pretty challenging because still it's new country, new people, new everything.
Uh-huh.
You have to start your life from not the very beginning, but from a certain beginning. um, it was a bit tough because I still also had to learn, like the educational system, how the classes work. I had to settle my routine. I had to realize like my schedule and how it worked and everything. So that was a bit tough, but then it went well. But again, in the middle of the second semester, the full-scale war happened in Ukraine,
Right.
which also, not facilitated my journey there for sure. There was another thing that I was worried about, and it really had an impact on my journey and on my future studies and on my future everything. So
And did you find, I guess, some support system at that time?
in France,
Yeah.
no.
No.
No, that actually, people, when I tell them that I had no support in France at all, people are like, but how? How is it possible? But yeah, that's the truth. I really remembered well when the war started. I was like in the bus. I got a phone call from my friend. And she was crying and she was like, oh my God, I saw like a bombing like not far from my house. Like I saw it, I heard it, I woke up from this. Like I couldn't really realize what was going on because when my parents called me and said that the war started, they were so calm. Like my dad, you couldn't hear any stressful pieces in his voice. He was like so calm and chill and, like nothing happened. But then when my friends were calling me and when they were sending me the texts, messages and like the videos, I was like, oh my God, but that's like the real full scale war. Like what's happening? How can that be? And I mean, and there was the period before the full scale war started. It was like a very intense period where like embassies were leaving the country, where all the international delegates were like, come on guys, you gotta leave the country and everything. So there was a pretty intense period before that. So there was a tension already.
Yeah.
So we never knew if it's gonna happen or not, but it happened. And no one believed it. Me neither. I was like, how is that even possible? But it happened.
Wow.
So, and yeah, coming back to the support, so there were a few Ukrainian students in Schema, and we decided to organize like a social thing in the university. And I was like, okay, guys, come on, we gotta like do this and this. So the idea was to collect the humanitarian aid for the Ukrainian families and children, and then to send it to Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And also we were planning to make some posters to put around the campus. And it was so complicated to do that because the administration back there, they were like, okay, you can't do it here. You cannot cover the sign, the logo of the school. This place, no, you cannot do it. So we were like, okay, but where can we actually establish the thing? And I was like, but guys, are you on our side? Like, why are you blocking this? But finally we did that. But like, there were like, it's been a few days after the war started and after like we actually requested that
Yeah.
when it actually happened. And then again, when it happened, when we established like places, the collection places for the humanitarian aid, we kind of provided the instruction of what you can bring, what should you bring, and like where to put it and everything. We realized that no one was actually caring. No one cared. No one was bringing anything. I even saw that like some students were actually taking something from those boxes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That is so low.
And I was like so frustrated. And at that time, I was like so pissed off because you can imagine like there is the war, that full-scale war that happened in the country, in my country. I'm seeing people being completely careless. They were hanging out, they were having the parties, because we have to remember that French culture means that you get a party like every week, 2-3 times per week.
Ugh.
People kept partying, and I was so mad at everyone. I just,
They didn't understand what you
yeah,
were
so
going
I
through.
didn't really receive any support. Yeah, some professors, when, they found out why I was like so depressed and why I was like skipping classes, not turning in the papers and everything, they were like, what's going on? And I was like, I'm Ukrainian and there is a full-time war and everything. And they were like, okay, yeah, we kind of understand, we support,
Yeah.
if there's anything, like I could talk to them. But the students especially, they didn't care.
And it was hard to even go back, right? To actually maybe see, because you said you were from the capital,
Yeah.
and I think it may be hard to go back. I don't know how that works. I'm not familiar.
Okay, yeah, I'll explain you. So, actually, I was in Kiev during the war. So I went back to Kiev last winter
Yeah.
for Christmas. So it's a bit complicated to travel there because the sky is closed. So you cannot take the plane, obviously.
Wow.
So what you can and should do is basically you either take a train to get to Kiev,
Yeah.
or like you take the bus or the car. So I had to take, firstly, I had to take the flight from Nice, which is in the south of France, to Warsaw, the capital of Poland,
Right.
and then I took a bus.
Wow.
So the whole trip was like almost 24 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was, that's,
What was your initial reaction when you first went back?
oh my God, I can't even express it.
Yeah.
Because, that's a very controversial thing because I always wanted to study abroad. I always wanted to be abroad and to live abroad.
Mm-hmm.
But then, especially when the full-scale war happened, and I realized that my home city, the place where I was born, I was raised, I, lived my whole life, had my friends, my life, everything, is being under the attack every single day. I felt so bad, and like I was missing my home city a lot. I was looking at the pictures and videos that were taken back then when I was still in Ukraine. I was still studying in school, and I was crying. I was crying a lot. That period, like I can really describe it as just crying,
I'm so sorry. That must be.
So when I actually came back last year during the winter time, I was so happy. We didn't have the light. We had like constant blackouts. The streets were dark. There was no electricity. Sometimes there was no like hot water or like electricity for a few days. And it was really hard, for people to live there.
Yeah.
But I had so much, love being there. And I just enjoyed it so much because I saw my friends. I saw my family, part of my family. I saw my cat, my home, my room.
Wow.
I was really happy, and I didn't care that there was no light or there was no electricity, or,
Yeah.
So yeah.
So it's like all of the basic necessities have become, no longer basic. It's like,
Oh yeah,
you're no longer entitled to these basic human needs.
exactly. People do not realize that their basic needs, their basic things, are not basic for someone. I was staying in there for like 10 days, only 10 days, but people live there, They have to deal with the constant blackouts, the constant, the AIDS, the alarms, the
Mm-hmm.
missile attacks, and the bombings and everything, and people have to live with that.
Yeah.
And people do not really realize that having like a warm water, warm shower in the morning is like it's not a basic thing. It's actually kind of luxury thing for some people.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
They take these things for granted, but for
Yeah, but it's
some
yeah,
people,
exactly.
wow. And what were your parents' reaction like when you first saw them?
Well, the thing is that at that time already my mom was in Prague.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom and my younger siblings, they were in Prague, in Czech Republic.
Yeah.
But my dad and my older brother, they were in Kiev. Um, and my dad, he's not really emotional, so he
Okay.
was like, "Okay, you're here. Come on, we gotta do something." So,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
So, have how did your father and your brother cope with the situation? I mean, it's hard for me to say cope because you don't cope with these things, you don't normalize them, right? But how were they? I'm sure they've changed a lot after all of this. Did you? How did you feel that they were dealing with the situation?
I mean, honestly, when I'm talking about especially like my family,
Mm-hmm.
um, they didn't really change anything.
Oh wow.
Like, okay, so my brother, he's studying at university in Kiev.
Yeah.
He kept studying. Well, his classes were online, of course, so
Right.
he just kept studying. My dad, he was still working. He kept working.
Mm.
Um, obviously, where there were like the alarms, they had to go to the bomb shelter or like the like metro station or
Yeah.
the underground parking or whatever there was like underground. They had to like go down and stay there. Um, but the rest didn't really change. I mean, obviously there are like the things, the routine stuff that have changed. They had to adapt to it. Um, but it's not like I know that a lot of people, especially Americans, they think that when there's a war happening in the country, it's like everything is bombed. There's no life. Everyone
Mm-hmm.
is just sitting in the bomb shelters and being scared and doing nothing and just, being terrified. No, the
Yeah.
life goes on and people are studying, people are going to the, restaurants and shops. And I mean, the life goes on because it has to go on.
Yeah.
Because if it didn't go on, we would be that, emotionally. So
Mm-hmm.
it has to continue.
Yeah. Well, you said you went back in the winter season.
Hmm.
Was that during Christmas time?
Yeah, that was during Christmas time. So I spent Christmas with my dad and my older brother.
And what was the Christmas celebration at that time look like?
Usually, as like in every city, I guess, there is like a Christmas tree. There would be usually a big Christmas tree on the central, on the central square in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And like in 2020 and in 2021, so before the war, there was like a huge Christmas tree with a lot of lights. There was like a Christmas market around, like the ice rink, children were playing. There was like this hustle and bustle around and like everything. But when I actually went to the central square, I saw that tree and I realized, how it really changed because the Christmas tree was way smaller. There were mostly no lights because, come on, there's like blackout. So
Mhm.
no one would actually use the lights. And you could see that the life really changed and people changed and their perception of everything changed.
Yeah.
But again, I was still feeling good. I was enjoying my time there because that was my home, and I came back home and I saw my friends that I haven't seen for like a few months. So I was happy to be there.
Wow. I'm so glad it happened. You got a chance to see them, and I'm glad they're still, still alive. They survived this.
Oh my god, that sounds so.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I'm sure it's really hard to actually cope with this because no one would anticipate that, they would wake up someday and their country is in a state of disarray, in a state of war, in a state of chaos. So it's really, yeah, no, it's hard to cope with such things. I don't even know if one can actually cope with these things. It's
Yeah.
especially when you're far away. I guess it puts a strain on one's ability to carry out day-to-day tasks, right?
But also people united. It's a very important thing to mention that people all Ukrainians, they really united. I've never seen our society and like Ukrainian population to be that united
Yeah.
as they became.
Wow.
And like I'm so proud to be Ukrainian. I've never been so proud before,
Yeah. Yeah.
because today to be Ukrainian means, it means way more than just belong to some country or, like some nationality.
Right.
It really means a lot. And people, when they discover that I'm Ukrainian, like you just saw the reaction of that lady, right?
Mhm.
It's like when you said that I'm from Ukraine, she was like, oh, so people have this instant reaction like, oh,
Yeah.
So I really admire the fact that today Ukraine is being, it's like a synonym to the freedom, to dignity and to being strong and independent and,
Mhm. Yeah.
So.
Are there any Ukrainians you got to meet here in the U.S.? Is there a community here?
Well, I just recently, like a few weeks ago, I met a guy.
Yeah.
He's from Ukraine. He studies at the Wake Tech.
Oh.
But that's it. He is the only student, like the same age as me,
Yeah.
from Ukraine. I've met some refugees, but those are the women, with the children, because those are usually the people who are, leaving the country and kind of searching for a new place to
Right.
settle down. And those were just 2 families.
Yeah.
So that was the first guy, the same age as me, student from Ukraine. I was like so happy because, when I actually saw him in the library, how I realized that he was Ukrainian is that he had a laptop and he had some stickers on it.
Yeah.
And those stickers were like, in the Ukrainian theme.
Oh.
So I was like, okay, I'm not sure if he was Ukrainian, but I had to ask him, his nationality because I would miss such a huge chance. So I approached him and I asked him where he was from, and he was like, I'm Ukrainian. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm Ukrainian too. We have to, keep in touch and everything. So yeah.
And what was his story? Why is he here? What brought him here?
So at first he's from Odessa.
Okay.
It's a city in Ukraine, also one of the biggest city. It's actually by the sea.
Oh.
So when the war started, he firstly went to Germany, and he spent like a year there. But then he no longer really wanted to stay there. So he decided to come here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's settled down. His life is somewhat.
Oh yeah, because he's it's been more than a year since he moved to the U.S. Yeah.
Right. And you've been here since August?
Yeah.
Since August? Wow. What do you think was so far a memorable lesson you learned from being abroad and being in the U.S.? It's definitely way. It's not as close as. It's not close to Ukraine. I mean, France is closer. So
yeah, for sure.
kind of stepping a little bit farther. Yeah.
The lesson that I learned when I came here to the U.S., I had I mean, we all have some sort of imagination of the country when we are going there.
Yeah.
And when people are talking about the U.S., especially in the Eastern Europe, the U.S. is meant to be like a dream. There is this concept of American dream.
Right.
So this concept is very much pursued in the Eastern Europe. So when I was coming here, I was kind of, I was not like expecting this American dream to be real.
Because it's a dream, right?
Yeah. But, I had some certain, a certain image of the United States.
Yeah.
But then it's actually a bit different, because the United States is also experiencing a tough period. People are, they don't really know what's going on, and people are confused here,
Hmm.
and a lot of people are, declining to work, and there's kind of chaos here as well. Because I've been talking to some people, Americans, and I've been asking them about their, for example, political preferences, and they're so unsure.
Yeah.
This American dream has never been under the question that much as it is today. So
I understand. I understand how a lot of them are frustrated with how the government seems to be. They believe that it's not doing what it's supposed to do, which is prioritize its people. These are some of the conversations I've been having. A lot of people are disappointed. They no longer affiliate themselves with any party, any political party. There are those
yeah,
people that just no longer trust the system, and that's rather disappointing. Um, but yeah, I just think that traveling and being abroad leads to a great deal of growth, but it also is hard in a sense that you don't get to see your loved ones or your family as much as you should. And I'm sure, especially with your case, when your family is in a state that is, when they're all over the place. You got some people in Ukraine, some people in the
yeah.
Czech Republic. That makes it even harder. So I can't imagine how it must be feeling, how you must be feeling. Like it's how it must feel like, because I mean, I don't get a chance to talk to a lot of people. Well, you're the first Ukrainian that I've ever talked to.
Really?
So,
Wow.
yeah, no, it's really fascinating to hear your story. I just wish that a lot of people would be able to hear these stories as well.
But again, like a lot of people when they listen to my story or they get a chance to talk to me, they're like, "Oh my God, we're like impressed by your story," or like all this stuff. But
Yeah.
it's just important to mention that I was lucky to be abroad. I never actually experienced like the real war, because I've been just in Ukraine like for those 10 days during the Christmas period.
Mm-hmm.
But people that are the same age as me, my friends, the youth, the Ukrainian youth, they're living with it every day, and they are the ones, who have fascinating stories and who are, like really incredible people. I mean, yeah, I do experience some difficulties, some challenges, and obviously I get to deal with that. And I didn't really want to experience that in like when I was 17. But again, there are so many more truly inspiring people that are even younger than me or older than me
Mm-hmm.
who are in Ukraine, and they've got the real stories to tell.
Yeah. But I'm glad I'm glad we had a chance to have this conversation. Glad to hear
Yeah, I
about your,
appreciate it.
yeah, I hope that a lot of people would understand more of what it's like to experience such unfortunate circumstances, and
Oh
to
yeah,
have more
because
conversations.
I have a kind of rule in my life
Mhm.
that I think it's that's the rule that I've been living with throughout my whole life.
Yeah.
So everything can be estimated through the comparison. You cannot really understand the real value of something
Mm-hmm.
if it hasn't been compared to something else.
Yeah.
So when people have the chance to discover, another culture as Ukrainian culture and what people are going through, maybe I really hope that they can actually appreciate their everyday routine a bit more,
Mm-hmm.
and become more thankful to what they have, to what they experience, to just the life they have. Because somewhere else, somewhere like in Ukraine, people experiencing way harder life.
Yeah.
And when you got a chance to talk to someone who can really explain you or just elaborate on that, you just start to think that maybe my life is not bad. I got like 2 hands, 2 arms, 2 legs. I can breathe, I can eat.
Yeah.
So I mean, that is the happiness for some people, you know.
Right.
So
These things that we take for granted.
yeah, exactly.
Well, it all starts with, I guess, with these conversations and more exposure, and I hope that these could lead to more understanding or facilitate understanding of the other side. Thank you, Viktoriia, for joining me. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much. Thank you for having me. I was like, I really appreciated the chance, you know, to talk about my story and just, you know, to talk with you. So
Absolutely. I think it's worthwhile to have these conversations. Thank you.
thank you.